Kanye West Sunday Service. We're going to talk about that and more on this episode of The Urban Perspective. What's up, world? Pastor Jerome here, and you are tuned in to The Urban Perspective. My guest today needs no introduction. You know him from albums way back in the day, Turn My Life Up, Lions and Liars, Talented 10th, The Narrative Volume 2, and so many feelings. You are tuned in with my brother, Sho Baraka. Sho Baraka, welcome to The Urban Perspective.
Thank you for having me, sir. I'm glad that I can come and give a little Kanye rant.
Yeah, yeah. That's a line. Appreciate that, man. So I want to jump right into it, man. Again, I appreciate you coming on board. I appreciate your life and ministry. For those that don't know, Sho and I are great friends. We met through a mutual friend, Pastor James Robeson, up there in Brooklyn, New York. And I've been a fan up close when we've been able to do some things together, but always from afar. So again, brother, I appreciate you. Appreciate your artistry, and I appreciate your mind, which is why I wanted you to be a part of this conversation so that people can be privy just to how you think and then hear your thoughts as you've talked to people. I know you've been able to see some of the stuff. So recently, Kanye West has started these Sunday services. He's been doing these all over the country, but recently he was in your neck of the woods at New Birth Missionary Baptist Church, large church down there, formerly under Bishop Eddie Long, now under the leadership of Jamal Bryant. And at that particular service, there's been a video going around about 10 minutes long where Kanye West talked about radical obedience and how can we give him the least when he gave us the most? And so I just want to know, what were your initial thoughts after seeing that video?
There is nothing to offer, God. That's what I thought. Anytime you engage in material like that, you're always front-loaded with context of what you assume of the person before, what people have said about them, what you're experiencing in the moment, and what you think people may want to hear from you. And so, as you asked that question, I really don't know what I was thinking, because I have all these perceptions, these preconceived ideas of what I think about Kanye. I have these preconceived ideas of what I think about church, what I think about New Birth, what I think about Jamal Bryant, what I think about people who attend churches just to be in front of celebrities, my own fascination with Kanye, his music, my own this gruntledness about Kanye and his music and his political agendas, but the thing that I appreciate about him as well. And then I have what people want to hear from me, right? So there's all these things that are swirling about, and to be honest, I'm conflicted on a lot of issues. And I tend, lately as I get older in age, I tend not to be hasty in my proclamation of ideologies and philosophy. I tend to think and say, all right, what is beneficial and what is unhealthy about the thing that I'm experiencing right now.
Well, no, that's good. I think I like that, because I think Christians, we need to grow in living in the tension, or living with tension. Right. So some there would say there shouldn't be any conflict because of album covers of him picturing himself as Jesus, his wife, Kim Kardashian, and a tape she made that people see as a catalyst for making her famous. And so some of it's association, some of it's direct. And so some would say, as a believer, Sho, you shouldn't have any conflict. You should just dismiss him. So they don't leave any room for nuance. So can you unpack why you have a conflict and then some of your personal conflicts?
Okay, yeah. So, first of all, let's just be very clear. Kanye is very flawed. But guess what? Jerome Gay is flawed.
Absolutely.
The difference between Kanye's, I'll get into the more spiritual observations in a second. But the difference between Kanye's flaws and your and my flaws is that Kanye's flaws are on the public. It's on the stage. And everything he does is going to be magnified. Now, we all know that Kanye throughout history has had some attachment to an understanding of faith, a proclamation of Jesus in some sort of way, form, or fashion, right? How genuine you and I may think that obedience, as he communicates at New Birth, is to Jesus is a whole different conversation. But we know that he's not shy about communicating, one, his personal beliefs and things that he believes in. And he's done that since day one. He's claimed his belief in Jesus. I think we also got to understand that Kanye's been dealing with some mental health issues, and he's been very public about that. And so we don't even know how much of his mental battle and his personal struggle has to do with his view of like him as being Jesus with the Jesus album and all this other stuff and his relationship. So ultimately, I say this: I think that I'm always willing, especially when I don't know an individual, because I've met too many people who've had public platforms, and you meet them in person, and you say, oh, "Dang, that person was like, they're not at all like I expected them to be," right?
Yeah.
So I think, in one sense, I will say this, is that we all have to be careful on how we publicly condemn people in their lives. On the other hand, if you're proclaiming to be a Christian, we have every right to see what fruit you bear, right?
Absolutely.
I think the main problem that I have, the personal conflict that I have with seeing Kanye at a New Birth is, I think it's either Titus or Timothy, where he says, it could be, I don't know, you guys know, yeah, where he says, don't all of you be so eager to become pastors or to be speakers, communicators. Because what happens is I think part of the problem is our fascination with celebrity, right? We love celebrities. We pray for celebrities. We always say, man, how much of a blessing would it be for this person to come to Christ? And then when they come to Christ and use their platforms for the benefit of Christ, they were like, oh, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't. And this is the war of our fascination with celebrity. And this is why I think Jesus always teaches not only come to know him, but come to know him and be humble and learn. And sit your tail down somewhere, right? Everybody's not going to be Paul when they disappeared into the Arabian Nights for like 3 years and learn and get tutelage. And I don't even know if we want that, because we're so eager to have champions for our causes, not just for faith, for political reasons, for all types of reasons. We want a champion. And when we find that champion, we want to put them on a pedestal. However, when we put them on a pedestal, we find out that they don't champion in the way that we want to champion, then we have problems, right? And I think, honestly, this is a large part of the issue with some of the Christian hip-hop individuals who kind of stepped away from wanting to be labeled Christian hip-hop artists. It's not that people don't believe that they love Jesus anymore. It's that, they don't belong to our culture anymore, right? And when they don't belong to our culture, that removes value from me, not from them. It makes me feel like I'm on this island by myself and there's nobody cool to represent my brand and my lifestyle, right? And I think a lot of the issue is we want somebody who fits our lifestyle brand perfectly, and if that's the case, we'll never find that person. And Kanye obviously doesn't fit that, but I think our fascination with celebrity and his desire or his need to sit his tail down and probably learn and grow is paramount. However, I don't find anything wrong with that 10-minute clip you sent me. Like, I'm listening to that 10-minute clip, and if I'm not mistaken, most of that, I'm just like, amen. Amen. I'm encouraged by it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I'm sure there's more questions. So,
I think
I'll start there.
Yeah, I think to your point, there's this fascination, like you said, with celebrity. Like Israel wanted a king.
Absolutely.
God says, here's Saul. Oh, now you don't want him. Because you realize, he's flawed. God is a better king because he has no flaws, but he's not enough. And so we see people wrestling with that. I do think I like your point, because I think it's exposing, again, some of us, we want to be able to say such and such went to our church, but if the presence of the Holy Spirit is there, why isn't that enough? And for many it isn't. But then also we want these people to get saved, but then it also exposes our truncated view of salvation.
Absolutely.
Because I agree he needs to be discipled, but to your point, the woman at the well didn't need to be discipled to just proclaim his goodness.
Absolutely.
And so in that clip, he proclaimed his goodness. Again, we don't like the source. I want to read Philippians 1:16 through 18, because I've been hearing two sides of this argument. So I'm going to read it, and then I'll present the argument to get your thoughts.
All right.
Paul, our man Paul, says this: "These preach out of love, knowing that I am appointed for a defense of the gospel. The others proclaim Christ out of selfish ambition, not sincerely thinking that they will cause me trouble in my imprisonment. What does it matter? Only that in every way, whether from false motives or true, Christ is proclaimed, and in this I rejoice. Yes, and I will continue to rejoice." So I read that verse because Paul is saying literally the motives of the people is wrong, but the message is so good regardless of the source. If someone is saying Jesus deserves, as to Kanye's word, radical obedience, he gave the most, we shouldn't give him the least. He even challenged some other artists talking about receiving DMs. Like, he went a little deeper than expected. I guess my question would be is how much should we take the source of the message from the content of the message? Because that's what seems to, because now again, Paul isn't affirming bad doctrine. He's saying, look, they're getting the gospel right, even though they're doing it from wrong motives. So what would you say there? Because even if some people are saying, well, Kanye just want to be seen. Even if that's the case, what about the content? Yeah.
Even if Kanye, so Kanye's a performer, and I'm a performer. I want to be seen. You know what I mean? You're a pastor. You want to be seen. And it's not just because you want to be seen. It's you have a gift to communicate, and you think, man, the Lord has gifted me with this ability. There's that part of you that's like, I want to do this not only because I think I'm good and God has given this to me. I want to do this because it brings me joy and pleasure, right? And there's nothing wrong with an individual being on a stage and talking about the goodness of God because it brings them pleasure to be in front of people, and they see that people have a response to that, right? That's not just human nature. We all want to be seen in some capacity. A person who's an engineer may not want to perform on a stage, but they perform at their desk or in a lab in front of a laptop, and when they see that their work is done well and people praise it, maybe not to them, they don't probably get a statue, but the talk of the infrastructure of the city is like, man, I just love this city. Eventually, that makes them feel proud about what they do, and that continues the work. And so the whole idea of a stage incentivizing someone's worship, to me, I don't think that's a valid argument. I think the fact that people work for the glory of God and they do things for the glory of God is enough. Was there another part of that question?
No. So is to what you just said.
Oh, the source.
Yeah, the source part, like. Yeah.
Which
I do. Obviously, in some instances, it matters.
Absolutely.
But where's the line of demarcation?
Yeah, and so that's more of a theological discussion. I would say on a sociological discussion, I think we're all flawed. Like, to me, there are things. So we live in a cancel culture, right, where everybody wants to cancel people, right? Mm-hmm. And there's always going to be someone that finds a reason to cancel you, right? MLK could have been canceled for many reasons because of his sexual exploits. Mm-hmm. None of us will say that the work he did wasn't pertinent and it wasn't important for the movement. However, there are some people who found, and there'll be people today, black folks as well, who will say his behavior was unacceptable, right? And however, we look at the source and we say, man, obviously the Lord used that man in a very special way. We can even go to what some would say a greater atrocity, which is, Puritans and folks who owned slaves and slaves. And
Martin Luther was anti-Semitic.
Yes, right. So there's a long list of people who are praised for the work, but we recognize that just because of their actions, their actions their lifestyle, which was atrocious in many ways, doesn't necessarily say that everything they did, I guess, invalidates the work that the Lord did through them, right? Now, I don't read certain people because of their lifestyle. I don't listen to certain music because of certain people's lifestyle. I don't watch certain people's programs because of their lifestyles. However, if other people do, I'm not going to say, you know what, you're non-Christian or you violated some sort of gospel code because of that. It's just my own personal moral line that I'm not willing to cross. So in the case of Kanye, yes, his wife has, I guess you say, risen to fame because of a sex tape. But she's also done some good work. I guess you can say some people would debate whether it's good work or not, but in the justice space, right? Kanye's had some very questionable album covers, and some of his lyrics have been quite questionable. But he's also made music that I think has gotten me through some wonderful, or some really tough times, some wonderful times. And I think him getting on stage talking about the goodness of God and the obedience of Jesus, to me, is a wonderful thing. Now, is he going to be the first person I call when I'm thinking about somebody exegeting like Romans? Absolutely not. He's not going to be the person I'm like, yo, man, let's go to this dude because we need to really understand what transubstantiation is. No, but if I want to know what Jesus means to a person who's been through a lot and who's seen a lot and who's been to the top of the world and celebrity, then you know what? Let me ask this man what it means to believe and trust in Jesus. So I don't know. That's
So how should we? His wife has said on interviews that these are Christian services, but there's no preaching.
Kanye or to God at this church?
There's no praying, there's no
praying.
sermon, there's no word, it's just music and it's just a feeling.
So it's heavy on the worship side, and clearly he's a talented musician or producer, so the music's top notch. Do you think, is there a standard to which we should judge these based on the fact that the preaching element outside of what happened at New Birth has been removed? Why not?
Absolutely not. This is not this is not politics. This is not a discussion of politics. He's a musician. He's putting on a service. This is not a church service. I don't think he's not trying. As much as I understand it to be, and my understanding of it is quite limited, and I even told you, it's like, man, I don't want to speak authoritatively about something that I don't feel like I have enough information about. However, from the people I know who've been there, they don't parade it as a church. Mm-hmm. It's not any way subtly or subversively trying to be a church. It's a gathering of individuals who are coming together to, as you say, worship. I don't know if that's how they communicate it, but an experience. And I think it's understandable from someone who's a musician, someone who's an artist. We think about concert experiences in themselves are, in a way, a worship, an emotional experience, right? You get a bunch of people together and they're singing praises of something, right? And so, honestly, this is a very natural transgression for Kanye. I do think there are a lot of people who will go to these type of events and they will do one of two things. One, they just want to experience something that is cool. There are some people who are significant, like genuinely seeking and suffering in some sort of way, and they feel like this can be a catalyst for a truth that they're seeking out. And the fact that they're very clear about this being some sort of Christian gathering, I think it's quite important because it's not this universalist thing. It's not this all faith. It's like, no, this is a Christian thing. Though there's no preaching, we're going to sing and we're going to gather and we're going to proclaim the goodness of God and our faithfulness to Jesus. Now, doctrinally and institutionally, it may be a little ethereal, but at the end of the day, we know that this is a man who loves Jesus, and they're coming together to sing Christian songs. They're going to transform the songs and make them more Christian, what I don't have a problem with at all. And I think people are coming to get an experience, and hopefully they will find the truth of God and Jesus in that, and it will lead them to a more structural institution like your church or another church or churches in California where they're attending these churches?
Now, you brought up something that I want you to unpack a little more, because it seems that artists, so I'm going to present this not definitively, but this is actually oftentimes an assumption about you and other artists, right? And it seems that the mindset is that we get artistic passes on certain areas of doctrine because it's art.
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, I'm expressing, so I may use this word. I wouldn't use this word in church, but I'll use it in my song. I wouldn't use, a cuss word and say, oh, well, I'm gonna use this, and yes, I still love Jesus, and it shouldn't be brought into question because I use this word. I was artistically capturing a moment, an emotion. So when we come to that, I want to get into your mind, the mind of an artist. Like, what is that thought process? And then I don't know if I would say there is a line, but it's a gray line. It's not going to be black or white. But I would love to hear you just speak to that as an artist, because typically I'm getting different answers from people who are musicians or actors and into artistry as a profession.
I think Ephesians 4 is the line of demarcation for me, right? Unwholesome talk that comes out your mouth. And I think it's for the tearing down and the building up of individuals, right? Mm-hmm. I think our hermeneutic around that, and you will be able to speak to this a little more eloquently than I will, right? But what does it mean to tear down and build people up? If I was to say, that's my N-word, am I tearing you down? Am I building you up? Now, to some folks, that word inherently carries a little sting to it. Mm-hmm. But there are other words that aren't cuss words that also carry a sting, right? I think it's all about the intent of the word. And if the intent of the word is to tear down or build someone up, I don't give much merit to words in themselves, right? So when you say a cuss word, I know what a cuss word is. However, I know that a word used to tear somebody down and to damage someone's morale can be a cuss word. Mm-hmm. Or it's a word that carries much vitriol. And to me, that can be any word, right? That can be any packaged term that is thrown at a person to demoralize them. I'll say this also to answer your question. I am an artist. I am a creative. I think the problem with Christian creatives and Christian artists is that we felt this pressure to be pastors and theologians. And it wasn't until, some years ago that I had to reconcile within myself that I'm not a theologian, though I can be a theologian, right? I am not a practicing theologian. I am not a vocational. I'm not a vocational theologian. I'm not a vocational pastor. However, I do have those elements to be able to be pastoral, to be an elder, and to be theologically savvy. I am an artist, and I create art that tells the truth about society. Mm-hmm. The only way that you can tell the truth about society is...
Oh, no.
Are you still there?
Yeah. It's froze for a second. It stopped there. The only way you can be... It stopped there, yeah.
Okay. And so the only way that you can be honest as an artist is by... the only way that I think we tell the truth is by being honest about sin and grace, right? Mm-hmm. And we tell the truth about sin, but we also tell the truth about grace. And oftentimes what I think about when I engage Christian art is we don't tell the truth about sin. We don't tell the truth about language. We make sin very cheap. And when you make sin very cheap, you make grace very cheap. And you make the death and the resurrection very cheap. And what I think artists, and this is just me, I don't know what exactly you're talking about, but when I try to take creative license, and when I say I should have the freedom to be able to express these things, is because I want to tell the truth of how dark, how wicked the world is, but also how beautiful and how gracious the redemption story is. And in order for me to do that, I need the palette of language. But I also know that there are going to be repercussions of how I use that language, and I want to use it in a way that's not tearing down people, but in a way that's building up truth, building up an ethical idea of what I believe the Bible is communicating about these truths and these ideas. And I think you can do that without being demoralizing to people.
Yeah, and I was asking that to basically say, should Kanye get that same license? Because I think that's the issue. You would say yes.
I would say absolutely. I would say so. Like for instance, I just listened recently to like Chance the Rapper's album, right? There's some things on there that I feel like, okay, that probably went a little too far. However, I still engage and know that my particular palate can consume that, right? There's language on there that I would say, and there's ideas on there that I would say, man, I agree with the way he's talking about marriage, the way he's talking about sexual ethics, the way he's talking about relationship, the way he's talking about success and his faith in God and Jesus. I'm like, man, this is, to me, the same type of ethic that I would share. However, it is heavily ridden with strong language, right? And so some folks will stop at saying like, this is something that Christians should engage. And I would say, no, I would say this is something that Christians should definitely listen to engage. Now, not all Christians, just like I don't think all Christians should play sports or join the military. Like there's a certain line that you your code that you believe in. But I think the Bible teaches us and gives us a wide range of parameters in saying, hey, trust me here on your left and trust me here on the right, and maneuver within this space by loving God and loving your neighbor.
Yeah,
how do we do that?
No, I think that's good, because I think one of the things we need to really examine within ourselves as the universal church is just the hypocrisy when it comes to artistry. So some people will condemn Kanye for his music, lyrics, and things like that, but actively watch Power. And I'm like,
right.
So I'm like, you can't have it both ways. You can't have it both ways. You can't watch, the stuff that, and my own personal, I'm not gonna watch it because of the amount of skin that's shown from what other people have told me. So I'm like, for me, I'm not watching it. But it's some people who know they know more about ghosts than they do Ephesians, but then will speak disparagingly about Kanye as we get to witness his transition. So I'd love for you to kind of talk about that. I see artistic hypocrisy from those that want to condemn.
There's a different standard, right, for I think people who claim to be Christians when they engage in language that may be strong versus the language we will accept from people who don't necessarily say they're Christian. To your point, like Kanye, now that he's a Christian, well, he shouldn't use this word, he shouldn't use that word. He shouldn't have any kind of sexual connotation to any of his music or songs, right? He shouldn't talk about sexual acts with his wife. But to your point, we'll watch Power, we'll watch Game of Thrones, we'll do all of this and do all of that. I think there needs to be a liberation within Christianity, and I want to be very careful, because I think there's red tape within our moral code for a reason. Because we can't just allow everything to pass through, right?
Absolutely.
There needs to be a standard.
Yeah.
There needs to be a standard of purity. There are things that are holy, right? There are certain acts about that me and my wife perform that I shouldn't just be free to just say, hey, this is what we do in the bedroom. You know what I'm saying? Like, there should be taste. However, I do think there's a sense of prudishness within the church that causes us to fail and have an authoritative voice in a lot of areas as well, right? Because we're so afraid to talk about certain things, but because we're afraid to talk about what happens in the dark, folks go out and learn these particular ethics and ideas in other places, right? And there is no limit to what they say and how they communicate it out there. And so if we're more liberal in how we talk about things, with the sense that we have a pure mind about talking about this, and we're thinking about these things with a just, with a pure, with a good rapport, while talking about sex, while talking about language, while talking about violence, while talking about war, then I think the world will have a better balance, right? Because what happens is we live in pendulums. We live on people who are very prudish, and then we on the other side we live with people who are very licentious, and that's why I have a friend who's a photographer, and he constantly posts images of half naked women, but he does it to me in a very tasteful way, right? These are very beautiful women, and he shoots it very beautifully. He lights it beautifully, and there would be a time when I used to be like, man, I want to show support to this brother because I want to show him that I can be a man of faith and look at this without objectifying this woman and of this moment and seeing it as purely pornographic, right? This is a sexual thing, but it's sexually in a tasteful way, if that makes sense. And I think it takes muscles, it takes spiritual discipline to get there. Everybody can't just jump to that. And I think it's wisdom, just like you said, like, you don't watch Power. I don't watch Power either. One, because I just, I'm done with the gangster narratives. But also because I think I started watching one episode and like the way they was smashing it, I was like, nope, can't do it. I was like, I just can't do it. I just can't do it. Now there's some shows that have sex in it, and I'm like, I can do this because it doesn't lead me to like.
Yeah, it can take you somewhere mentally you don't need to go.
Exactly.
So you gotta know, yeah.
So I think you just gotta get to a place where the Spirit of God comforts you in a way where your mind doesn't go to a place of inappropriateness versus appreciation of the beauty of that thing.
Last thing, man, I want to ask, the artistically, musically, is hot. I mean, I watched several. I watched the Aaliyah remake. Crazy.
Be without you, we don't wanna live. Live without you, live without you. We don't wanna go. Go without you, we can't live without you, Lord. Gave his life, sacrifice, made agreement, and vowed that he would always be there for us, do whatever he said. Let nothing ever come between us, that his love would never leave us. That was a while ago.
I mean, some of the stuff they've done, just as a fan of music, it's like, well, this is fire. But there's a danger side of it where some of the people who don't know what exegesis is, who don't know what hermeneutics are, who are not going to pick up the word, can confuse a euphoric moment with a move of the Spirit. And I see this happening more and more. Actually, even as far as about 10 years ago, with Jay-Z and Mary J. Blige, he would use the phrase, take them to church. And so an emotional high has been conflated with an actual church experience, which I think to some degree this is providing. So last thing, I just want you to kind of speak to that as an artist. I know you want moments of euphoria, but since we are dealing in the spiritual realm, you could feel good, but it not be good, right? So just break that down, man. I want to end with that.
Let me start with this. You can do that in the church as well, though.
Right.
There are many churches where you can have a very emotional experience and it not be grounded in truth.
Right.
There are a lot of people who claim to be grounded in truth in a church, but I don't see emotion, and I think that's problematic as well.
Right.
Because if I'm talking about the goodness of God and what He's done not only through me, my soul cries out, as they say, hallelujah, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think there's problems on both sides. However, I'm gonna push back on a little bit about what you said, because I think about the human hermeneutic, if you will, of history, right? Mm-hmm. When you have slaves who don't understand, or people who are uneducated who don't understand how to exegete scripture, but they know in a moment, right, that this particular truth that is being communicated, and this moment of this gathering that we're coming together and we're singing and we're talking and we're preaching is doing something to me. I don't think that's uncommon, especially to Black people. It's especially in a church context, right? There have been many movements throughout history where people have expressed their joy and euphoria through a religious gathering without there being great hermeneutic and exegesis because the greatest hermeneutic that we have is that we just know that God is good and he's going to keep us and he ain't bring us this far to let us go, right? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like there are simple understandings that we just know, and I think that's enough. However, we hope that from there they can grow into deeper and greater truths and understanding who God is. But I do think one thing I'm personally cautious about within my own, I guess you can say, dogma, is feeling that I need to get people to adopt a particular systematic theology.
And let me be clear, we agree there, because I don't think monotone emotionless gatherings constitute orthodoxy.
Right.
I guess the thing I was getting at is I saw this a while ago where a person was like, I went to a Tyler Perry movie and I felt like I've been to church, so there's no need for me to go. And like they literally said that, and they was in your part of the city too. It was funny. It was they were talking to people in Atlanta about, and so that's what I'm talking. Listen, I push back against regular principle. A lot of that reformed imperialism, which I come against hard. But I'm talking about, we know some people will be like, look, I don't need the body. I can just, as long as I can find this expression or this feeling, that's it. And that's we know that's dangerous, and that's what I'm talking about.
Absolutely, that's dangerous. It's ridiculous. The one thing, and you know what, a whole nother conversation is how do we decipher what is like people talk about they hate religion, but they love spirituality or they love God. And to me, you can't really divorce, like, religion has structure. Mm-hmm. Faith has structure. Mm-hmm. Spirituality has structure. Christianity has structure. Mm-hmm. The belief in Jesus has structure. Now, what religiosity does to those things can be quite dangerous. However, you cannot love Jesus. You cannot love anybody. You cannot love anything without there being parameters and structures involved in it, right? Because if I love my wife and I love my kids, there are certain expectations that I have to follow out, right? Mm-hmm. My kids need me around. My wife needs me around. Right. We need to provide for one another in our family. There needs to be a level of faithfulness. We need to communicate with one another. There's no way that you can say you love God or love Jesus and not love his people. His people. Yep. Be committed to his people. Help to try to provide for his people, right? And be in communication with his people. And so therefore, I just think it's a bunch of fluff. And it's an excuse for people to say they want the trinkets of a relationship with Jesus with no expectations attached. Right. And to me, call it whatever you want to. I call Christianity. It's a religion to me. It's also spirituality. It's a relationship. It's all those things, right? And all those things are good, and all those things can be bad, because you can corrupt the religion, you can corrupt the relationship, and you can corrupt spirituality. And so while we're trying to dance around labels, so what I'm saying is, are you living up to the expectations that Jesus put on us? And if you're not, then that's a problem. Right.
Man, Sho, this has been great, man. Thank you. I think we need to do a better job of understanding that every person has a moment of transition. I almost want to get away from the word testimony because it has a finality to it. Most of us are going to live in that hyphen between your birth and your death. And we get to witness Kanye's hyphen. So from Yeezus to Pablo, we're witnessing a man's journey in the public. And if God was to allow you to be on on an episode of Cheaters and to put every decision you made and look at the film, the only thing you can rest in, Kanye can rest in, is the fact that Jesus' blood covers you. There's going to be some bad decisions. There's going to be some things on my tape. If my tape was on the screen, even now, as a pastor, there's going to be some things there. And I think that's where I want. Now, grace, again, is not a license for bad doctrine or for us to remove holiness. The reality is he's holy. That's the point, which is why we need to be hid in him. So, Sho, thanks, man. Any final words, man, before we end this?
No, I think it'll be it behooves us to recognize that a lot of our baggage is and the things we project on the people are expectations that we want people to fulfill through cultural mandates, not through biblical mandates, not the biblical principles. These are the cultural things that we want them to do.
Yeah.
And as we are reevaluating if these things are biblical expectations or cultural or personal expectations, then we also need to recognize that people are flawed and there's grace, as you so there's grace, and we all fall, and you know, the Lord is forgiving, and this is a marathon. And we praying for that brother, and you know, praying for ourselves.
Yeah, I hope that we would pray that it is authentic versus assuming that it's not.
Absolutely.
And then also realize that we can be guilty of the same euphoric moment, that a praise break sometimes can be a moment of euphoria, especially when the praise break is all about you and not him. Because oftentimes when I see these praise breaks, it's about you getting a house, you getting a spouse, or you getting a promotion, which are great things, but we're there to worship him, not just what we can get.
Absolutely. And let me say this, authenticity is different for different people.
Yep. Amen.
So.
Amen.
Yep.
Well, Sho, thank you again. Thank you for your wealth of knowledge. Thank you for your expertise. Thank you just for your perspective. You've been tuned into the Urban Perspective. I love you. God bless you. Peace.